How many of you have heard this joke? I hate my wife, and there's no room for her gigantic ass in my man cave. We really need to reframe the way we look at our adult romantic relationships. Why aren't my relationships working? Well, first of all, let's talk about compulsive heteronormativity and the expectations that we're placing on ourselves because of this, as well as the expectations we're placing on our partner and the people around us too. Let's talk about the history of marriage and why it was in place to begin with. It was originally a way of transferring property. It was a means for women to have support. Otherwise, you just lived with your parents until all of you passed away. A lot of these situations now where you've got like a monogamous relationship, whether it's heteronormative or a lot of the models are now being used in homosexual relationships too, even though they're not particularly good models. But let's break it down. So compulsive heteronormativity, you're placing too many expectations on yourself and you're placing too many expectations on your partner. What this does, it creates a high degree of codependency between you. Now, it's perfectly fine to have people in your life that you rely upon, that you feel like you can rely upon. But forcing all of these things into a romantic relationship creates a dynamic where you're not necessarily having a good time with this person. And a lot of people actually don't consider their spouse or partner to be a friendship. They look at it as something entirely separate. And so then we have this dynamic where you're codependent with somebody, but you don't even necessarily consider that person to be your friend, which means that there's the potential for that to be a contentious relationship, that there's a certain amount of animosity there. How often do people value the things about us that we value about ourselves? So I've been married twice, full disclosure, and both of my ex-husbands valued my musical talent. And that was definitely a barometer and a deciding factor as to why I was in both of those relationships. I personally would rather be known as smart, really want to be known as a brilliant negotiator, than have somebody call me pretty. I don't really care if I'm pretty or not. I guess I have a certain amount of pretty privilege. I haven't necessarily cultivated beauty as an aspect of my personality. Which gets us into the commodification of other people. Now look, if you have an OnlyFans and you're getting paid, you're stacking that paper, more power to you. And I certainly would not want to take away from that. However, this new kind of economy built around people's nudes and the accessibility of their sexuality has created a situation where people feel like they can just order things from other people like they would order something animal style it in and out. And how many people actually really care what my breasts look like, what my body looks like under all these clothes? Do people actually care? Or is it just the novelty behind it? All of the ideas that I had for an OnlyFans so far are pretty niche, mostly involving reading manifestos with my tits out. So I haven't really explored that. Again, it goes back to me not really caring if people consider me pretty or not. I want to be valued for other attributes. And having an OnlyFans does not really contribute to that. Cultivating genuine connections with other people, which may or may not lead to sex. So when you have a friend that you hook up with, do you have to hook up every time you hang out? Negotiating physical boundaries with somebody when there's not this assumed motivation of sex definitely makes those interactions a lot more intricate. But it also means that you're like getting to know this person. You're seeing them as a fellow human being and not as a melange of holes to satisfy your needs. Perceptions of a femme presenting person's worth in relation to promiscuity. So there are a lot of things that devalue femme presenting people to others. One of those things is a perception of promiscuity. Gender presentation, that can be another one. If you are not performing these gender roles, your value is seen differently. And there are other things about expression that can come into this too. My own experience having been previously as a musician, I'm not really doing that right now anymore for a variety of reasons. But all kinds of things go into people's perceptions of your intrinsic sexual and romantic value. Now, what happens is with any of these factors, whether it's promiscuity or your refusal to adhere to gender roles, people see that and think that you are not worth investing in that kind of relationship. Doesn't mean that's true. We'll put a pin in there for later. People who are younger tend to have a higher sex drive and tend to be less discerning in regard to potential sexual partners, and that's just because there's not as many burnout experiences. You know, like at this point in my life, as I mentioned before, I've been married twice. There's a lot of experiences that have come along with that. Not to mention all the other relationships I had that didn't turn out to be marriages. Soulmates, twin flames, all of those things are a scam. And they are scams perpetuated to make you think that you as a person are incomplete. It makes you more easily exploitable. And the people who belong in your life and will care for you may not look like what you think they will look like. Aside from whether or not you feel fully capable and fully realized and fully self-actualized as a person to take care of yourself from the time you leave your parents' house until the time that you pass on into the great beyond, there are going to be people who do want to take care of you and care for you And those people might not necessarily be romantic partners. And so by putting all this importance on soulmates and twin flames and all of that, you're really disregarding the humanity of these people who do actually care about you. So I didn't mean for that to come out so salty. Just, it's important to appreciate the people around you who do actually care about you also, even if they are not sexual partners. And especially because, as I mentioned before, a lot of people don't view their sexual partners as friendships. Heteronormative marriage and what I'll call trad wife tropes. It's an elaborate role play with a bunch of intricate rituals. I don't fully understand it. I don't really care to understand it. It doesn't seem to appeal to me. Can I cook? Can I clean? Yeah. And I do. Like any role play, it works best when you're both on the same page about what that entails. And the guys who tend to be involved in these types of relationships might not have the best communication skills. There's a lot of it that the power dynamic being built around the man as the provider in the relationship then structures it so that you don't really have a lot of room for negotiation if you're on the other side of that. The kinds of guys who are into trad roleplay expect you to already know or subscribe to their rules, and they might not respect you as a self-actualized person. So I know that relationship content doesn't necessarily seem like something that is very radical or very politically motivated, but when I set about to make this video, it was based on some of the interactions that I've been having with friends and with potential romantic partners lately that I've been thinking about a lot. And it also sets this framework for how I'm moving forward with the channel and some of the other topics that I would like to cover. This is kind of like the basic stuff. So, thank you so much. Never fear the pale threshold.